Right. Let's dive straight into this explainer on the psychology of confidence and validation. We're going to skip the usual pleasantries today because I want to drop you right into a deeply uncomfortable social scenario. I want you to imagine you're just walking down the street or sitting at your desk, and someone walks right up to you, looks you dead in the eye, and says something completely unsolicited.
Hey, I don't like you. I think you're just weird. Man, ouch, right? Just let that sit for a second. Do you feel that tiny, visceral spike of defensiveness in your chest? Well, that is a perfectly normal human reaction. Former finance professional Adam Burgeon uses this exact jarring scenario to make a really brilliant point about human psychology. Because if I walked up and told you that, confidence or not, hearing it would temporarily throw literally anyone off. We all feel the immediate sting of criticism. But that initial sting isn't actually what defines your self-esteem.
Because here's the thing. The real metric of your self-esteem isn't that first flinch. It's this. What is your delayed reaction? Once that initial shock wears off and the comment really soaks in, what do you do with it? Do you spiral? Do you immediately go change your outfit? Do you obsess over it for a week? Or do you just kind of shrug it off because you fundamentally know who you are? Bergen points out that your delayed reaction to external judgment is the ultimate litmus test for your true level of confidence.
So that brings us to part 1, the validation paradox.
Let's break down why the people who seem the absolute most self-assured are the ones who are completely unbothered by outside opinions. We're essentially looking at two entirely different operating systems for the human brain here. On one side, we have external cues, which is basically using immediate social approval to define your identity. On the other side, internalized standards. As psychological models show us, confident people rely primarily on their own internal standards, their own competencies, and their own values to judge themselves. To a truly confident person, external feedback is just data, it's informational, it is absolutely not identity-defining. They're comparing their outcomes to their own personal goals, rather than constantly scanning the room to make sure everyone is clapping for them.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking, uh-oh, I scan the room for applause literally all the time as there's something wrong with me, take a deep breath. Let's look at part 2, wired for social approval.
Seeking validation is a deeply ingrained instinct, not a personal failure. You are definitely not broken. Les Matheson highlights this incredible concept regarding our evolutionary biology. Our human brains literally evolved with social instincts that made us cooperative. We were inclined to group together into tribes for peer survival. Think about it. In ancient times, if the tribe didn't like you, you were cast out into the wilderness, and well, you didn't survive. Within the tribe, you learned your place by how others treated you. So we literally evolved to know ourselves through the reflection and approval of the group. Seeking validation is what kept our ancestors alive. It's hardwired right into our DNA.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, the roots of self-esteem.
So, how do we go from cavemen needing the tribe to modern adults needing likes on social media? Educator Jeffrey Bear offers a really fascinating perspective using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Esteem needs are fundamentally important to us, but here's the catch. People who exude confidence generally fall into two camps. Either they had their critical esteem needs met early on in life, or they're forced to pretend they do. People who are genuinely high in self-esteem don't constantly seek validation because they already received enough of it in the past to not desperately need it in the present. If you didn't get it, well, you might spend your entire adult life trying to fill that void.
Let's actually dig into that childhood conditioning for a second. As kids, we naturally require external validation for healthy development. We need our parents to clap when we take our first steps, right? We need them to tell us right from wrong. But as strategist Sean Carney points out, self-esteem issues are created when the facts or opinions of superiors conflict with an individual's own sense of what's true. If you know you did a really good job on a painting, but a parent or a teacher calls it a mess, it just shatters that internal compass. When we aren't fully taught how to trust our own standards, we carry that childhood need for a parent's applause right into the workplace and right into our adult relationships.
Okay, so how do we fix it? That brings us to part 4, internalizing your standards.
Let's shift from the root causes to the actual mechanics of stopping our reliance on the tribe. Heath Hunsaker points out a massive logical flaw in relying on other people. External validations come and go. One day people are praising you, the next day they're criticizing you. What happens when those external validations inevitably differ? Which one is right? Which one is wrong? You see, the problem with relying on the crowd is that the crowd is fickle. It's never a true, stable representation of who you are. To build true self-esteem, you have to realize that relying on external opinions is just a rigged game you can never, ever win.
And that brings up this absolutely incredible anecdote shared by Marcus Lester. He talks about a great martial artist named Chen Man-ching. Now, this master would never fight someone he knew he could beat. He would only fight people who he was absolutely certain would defeat him.
Why? Because he knew he learned nothing from winning. He only learned when he lost. He famously said, invest in loss. Just think about how liberating that is for a second. People who desperately seek validation are terrified of failing. But if you learn that you can grow from your failures, you completely remove the need for external applause. You aren't fighting for a gold star anymore, you're fighting for your own internal growth.
Moving right along to Part 5, the path to true confidence.
We know we need an internal compass, but how do we actually build the thing? Well, here is some highly practical advice drawn straight from the community. First up, Elizabeth Margaret suggests flipping the script. Ask a close friend what they value in you, and then take an honest audit of what you're actually good at and what you enjoy doing. Then double down on that. Stop comparing your journey to everyone else's. Second, Azubike recommends a practice of internal affirmations. Literally, be your own cheerleader. Acknowledge your strengths intentionally. When you practice saying things like, I am whole and complete, you are actively rewriting that childhood conditioning that told you needed someone else's permission to feel good.
And this leads into a really profound concept outlined by Soren Tanasa, where he contrasts two distinct paths. The first is confidence through competence. This is what most of us try, right? We try to be perfect at everything so people will praise us. But nobody can be good at everything, so this path literally always ends in exhaustion and failure. The second path is recognizing confidence as a natural state. This is the idea that you were actually born confident, but it was educated out of you by society just to make you easier to manage. Reclaiming your confidence isn't about becoming perfect, it's about returning to your natural state where you are solely responsible for your own happiness. Tanasa actually calls reaching this point a stage of eternal bliss.
Which brings us to the final thought of this explainer. If you already have your own internal standards, if you know what you're good at, and you're willing to learn from your failures, whose permission are you actually waiting for? Take a moment to just reflect on that. The only validation you truly need has been sitting inside you the entire time.